Hopefully we're working. Okay, there we go. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to yet another installment in our attempt to understand what the book of Daniel is trying to tell us. This is actually installment number 13. So there is a source sheet which you should be able to get from the Facebook page, and if you happen to be on my personal mailing list, then you will also get the source sheet there. The color code on the top is red. It's a bright red, and it says source sheet number 13. Don't get frightened by all of these texts. Some of them I've just really included just so as I have the reference at some point in the future. I may go back to studying and learning this again. The overall goal I want to remind all of us is to get a clear picture of the visions and the scenes that we get from the book of Daniel. I'm really, really focused on getting clarity in the pictures of the future, and the pictures of the course of history that are given to us in this book. We are actually at the end. We're in the final stretch, the home run, whatever the correct term is. This last three chapters, 10, 11, and 12, form a unit. It's the final revelation, right? We've seen over the course of the last couple of months that Nebuchadnezzar gets a dream of the future. It's the four metals and elements of the statue. We've seen that Daniel gets more than one vision. He sees the four beasts, the four animals. Then he sees the two animals in a following dream. And here we're going to try and get some sort of conclusion in all of this. I'm trying my very best to make a clear chart that will give, at least for me, and maybe for you as well, I hope, a picture of how this plays out. You can go to Wikipedia, you can go to Google, and you can type in chart of the book of Daniel, chart of diagram of the four kingdoms, and you'll see quite a few of them. They're very, very detailed, and they also have a very strong Christian element to them because they are factoring in the parallels with the book of Revelations. Obviously, if you happen to be a Christian believer in the Bible, please enjoy that way of looking at it. But we are part of a Jewish congregation here in the holy city of Jerusalem, and we're trying to focus on the Jewish meanings of this. What does the future hold for the entire world? And that's a question that's, I think, in everybody's mind in these particularly difficult times with all sorts of tensions and epidemics and not good things happening in the world. So to get a vision of the future and to have some of this told to us, I think it's worthwhile. It's a worthwhile exercise. There's a lot in these last chapters. They clearly repeat the previous visions of the future. The four, the two. And also focusing now, once we get into chapter 11, on what comes after the four kingdoms. There's a fifth kingdom that is a kingdom of great difficulty, a kingdom of great arrogance and haughtiness and power, a kingdom that challenges God. And then there's the rock. There's the kingdom of the rock, which is the kingdom of Israel, the kingdom that is put in place by God himself. And that is, of course, not a kingdom that seeks to dominate any other part of the world. In fact, the exact opposite. It's the kingdom that offers peace, harmony, understanding, how to get along with everybody else. Notwithstanding the fact that this is a unified theme that is clear in the book, there is a great deal of writing in the more contemporary secular commentaries. University professors, I'm looking at the Yale Anchor Bible in particular, because it's one of the easiest and more accessible books, that fits the whole book into the story of Hanukkah and the battle of the Maccabees against Antiochus Epiphanes, or as they say in Hebrew, Antiochus Epiphanes. Right? The story of Hanukkah does fit, and you will see that some of the Jewish commentaries as well note that these events, the story of Hanukkah, are predicted here in our text. This is an easy chapter. Chapter 10 is one of the easiest ones that there is. But the words are a little confusing simply because they're repetitive and they're subject to great debate. We're still in Hebrew. We're reading Hebrew text, so it's a good deal easier. We don't need our degree in Aramaic grammar to understand it. But I want to go through some of the important words, and it's the second page on my handout. They're very simple words. Notwithstanding that, they need to be clear, and you need to have clear in your mind that these words are going to swing in a couple of different ways, and how we read them the first time is going to influence perhaps how we read them the second time. Right? So instead of going straight into the text of the book and chapter 10 itself, what we're going to do is look at these important words and try to get a handle on what we need to be looking at when we read the text with the commentaries. Okay? What I've consistently done in handouts for this course and for others is not fill in all the blanks for you. So print it if you like. If you have trouble with all of that colored ink, let me know. I'll do a black and white version. Or I can give it to you as a Google Docs, Google document, and you can just write on it there. Verse number 1, V'tzava gadol. Tzava, as all of us know from contemporary Hebrew, is an army. Nonetheless, I'm sorry to say, tzava is also a period of time. In biblical Hebrew terminology, tzava is a period of time. And we had it before, v'tzava tinatein, a period of time will be given. Here the commentaries are divided. Is it going to be a very great army, or is it going to be a very long time? This is what we're dealing with here in trying to understand just the words. In verse 2, Shalosha Shavuim Yamim. I can read the words very easily. 3 weeks of days. We have previously had a week, meaning a week of years. And a week of days also. From the very beginning of the Bible, Yamim can also mean a year, a cycle of days. So 3 weeks of days can mean 3 cycles of 7 years being 21 years, and you're going to see the commentaries are following that one. Or it could mean simply exactly as the words say, 21 days. Lechem chamudot. 3. Verse 3. When we say to a little kid, chamudi, you are very chamud, you're cute, you're desirable, right? Chamad, this is Eretz Chemda, right? The land that is desired by God. So lechem chamudot is desirable bread. Historically, we're going to see the issue with bread is the exact opposite of the way things are today. Fine white flour was considered primo quality, and coarse bread was considered the food of the very poor. This is going to be an issue because you're going to see in Daniel chapter 10 verse 11 that Daniel is called Ish Hamudot. Right? So we're going from desirable bread to a desirable person. Quality, fine quality, refined. The words in verse 5 again, Daniel sees Ish Echad Levush Badim. Again, very easy words. One man wearing linen. The commentaries are divided. Is this an angel? It seems to be the angel Gabriel, because Gabriel is going to be mentioned here as well. But also, at least one of the commentaries, probably even two, say this is God himself, manifest in the form of a human being, and the garments are going to refer to different aspects of God. Then we're going to meet in verse 13, Sar Malchut Paras, the prince, the heavenly prince, the angel up there in heaven that represents the nation of Persia. Talmud Midrash gives him a name as well, which I just did not write down, and that's a mistake on my part. Here we have Esrim ve'echad Yom. We're going to see there's a fight up there in heaven. What goes on here on earth parallels what goes on up there in heaven. It's a deeply Kabbalistic thought, but it's straight out of this chapter in the book of Daniel. We'll get to it. There's a king. There's a king, and there are princes. The king is God. There are princes who have jurisdiction over what goes on in Persia, what goes on in Israel, what goes on in Canada, every other part of the world. 21 days. Esrim ve'echad Yom. It looks like this instance of 21 is just going to be 21 days. Then we meet Michael, Achad Hasarim Harishonim. We are told here that he is one of the first line of princes. So we've got the concept now that up there in heaven, there is a hierarchy. There is a layer and a level in which God lives. There is a layer under that of angels, and there are senior angels and there are junior angels. There are generals, there are captains, there are sergeants, and there are ordinary private soldiers in the army up there. Eitzel Malchei Faras. The terminology is going to be slightly blurred. So 13 is a peculiar verse, and it's going to cause us a little bit of difficulty. The Malchei Paras, the angel Gabriel, is fighting with the kings of Persia. And he seems to be recognizing and telling us that I'm doing this up here, and I'm doing this for you down there on earth. Right? Here's the word we're all waiting for. Verse number 14, Ba'acharit ha-yamim. At the end of the days. Right? We are going to translate this literally. The end of the days. Acharit ha-yamim can, of course, refer to the end of a historical period, a certain number of years. But we're not going to get a lot of information because Daniel is not giving us a lot of information. Ki od chazon layamim. The only really peculiar term that we have here, and we can translate this as ki because od, there is still, chazon, a vision, layamim, for the days. There's something else coming. There's another vision that we're not getting, and we may not get at all. Verse 16, who is Daniel meeting in his dreams? And the commentaries in Malbim in particular are going to get into quite a bit of, some of this was a vision, some of this he was asleep, some of it he saw while he was awake. And in any event, he saw Ha'omed Lenegdi, an unspecified individual, the one standing in front of me. Another angel, another spiritual entity, Kidmut B'nei Adam, like the appearance of people. B'nei Adam, people. Standing in front of Daniel in verse 16 was someone or something who looked like ordinary human beings. And then in verse 18, Kimare Adam, like the appearance of a man. Right? He doesn't seem to meet women up there in heaven for some reason. We'll just let that go. Sar Paras and Sar Yavan, verse 20, the prince of Persia and the prince of Greece. Right? So there's a whole United Nations up there in heaven. Because all the nations of the world are represented. And things that are going on up there parallel what's going on down here. Here's another one of these cryptic verses. Harashum bichtav emet. That which is written in the writing of truth. Just translating this perfectly literally. Harashum, the thing that is written, in the writing of truth, or the true writing, or the true book, the book of truth. And then finally, Michael Sarachem. Gabriel, the angel, assuming we're talking about an angel up there, that's talking to Daniel. He could be talking directly to God, so it goes one way or the other. Whoever is talking to him says, Michael, your angel. The angel of the nation of Israel is Michael, right? The text that we're going to be looking at is Daniel chapter 10. The link is there. That link that is Daniel chapter 10 will take you to Chabad.org, and will give you Rashi's commentary. I'm really getting into the notion that most of these books of the Bible, and other books as well that I'm learning and reading, both together with other people and by myself, it makes a great deal of sense to read from beginning to end with just one commentary. If you keep going back and forward, I think it does get confusing. I'm just getting a little bit older, and it's just a little harder for me to grasp things. But the going through all of the commentaries on each verse does seem to be confusing, and I think it really does help and makes life a bit more understandable to just follow one commentary. And that's the real advantage of the Chabad.org one, that their translation is 100% according to Rashi. Okay, if you want to do a little bit more reading and you want to have some reading for later on, click on the link to Ezra chapter 4. Because Ezra chapter 4 is the background to what is going on here. Yes, the books of the Bible overlap. They tell the same story. They refer to the same events over and over and over again. Here we're looking at Ezra, which is, of course, the story of going back to the land of Israel and attempting to rebuild the temple. Okay? So let's do a little bit of reading in the text here. Okay. Daniel chapter 10. In the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a matter was revealed to Daniel, who was named Belshazzar. The matter was true, but for a long time off. Emet hadavar v'tzava gadol. It was a true thing, and it was about a distant time. Although there's no reason to say that the Hebrew words actually mean that. Tzava, if we take it to mean time period, Gadol means long. Uvin hadavar, I'm trying to understand this and to explain it through a vision. This verse seems to be a title. It seems to just be a title and an introduction to the text. In those days, I, Daniel, had been mourning for 3 weeks of days. Here we go. You've got to keep in mind a certain amount of background. They certainly had in those days weeks. They had days. And they had years. But the issue is they didn't have years like we did. The years were referred to relative to the reign of a king. And we're looking at the kings of Israel. We're looking at a king of Persia. We're looking at a king of Media. We're looking at a king of Babylon, and they're overlapping. So the years, and also in the book itself, we're going back and forward in time. So in those days, I, Daniel, had been mourning for 3 weeks of days. Again, 21 years of mourning, or just 3 weeks. We're going to see how this plays out. I ate no desirable bread. Lechem chamudot lo achalti. Meat or wine did not enter my mouth, and I did not anoint myself until the completion of 3 weeks of days. In terms of halakha, in terms of Jewish law, we definitely get the rules for observing Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and Tisha B'Av, which is begins tomorrow night, the 9th of Av. The Talmud in Masechet Yomah is talking about the anointing of oil, whether that's permitted or not, and these are the sources that are invoked in that discussion. Let's take a little look at text number 1 in the handout. Tzava Gadol, Rashi, text number 1. Tzava Gadol l'zaman aruch yavo. Long time off. Rashi's foursquare firmly in the time. Tzava Gadol, this is coming. Hayiti mitabel. I was mourning. What is Daniel doing? Here Rashi is going to tell us Daniel is doing exactly what he appears to be telling us he's doing, and that is mourning. When he saw that Cyrus stopped building the temple in Jerusalem that he had previously ordered to begin, through the accusations and libels of these two particular individuals, Rachum Balte'em and Shimshi Safar are men's names, and that's written in the book of Ezra, and that you'll find in Ezra chapter 4. Daniel saw this, and he sat on the floor and mourned like a mourner observing the rituals of the loss of a family member. Right? Rabbi Yosef ibn Yachya, this is text number 2. I want to spend a couple of minutes on this one because I think he's saying something really important here. B'tzava Gadol, he is saying not a time period but an army. Binyan Gidulat Tzava Yisrael b'Malchut HaChamishi. We are looking to the 5th kingdom, right? Over and over again we talk about Daniel and the 4 kingdoms. There is a 4A and a 4B, right? And a 4C. The 4th kingdom splits up, and that's the time of really bad things. And then there's the 5th kingdom, which is the kingdom of God, the rock that will bring peace and harmony everywhere. So Israel is going to be great, and a huge multitude of people in the 5th kingdom, the Messianic era, the end of days, and that's what we're looking forward to. I want to read this next paragraph because I think he summarizes very much the way I think of it, and of course you're entitled to think otherwise. V'ya'an, because the text says it was revealed to Daniel, we are now going to explain that it's something very, very hidden, right? So it's actually a contradiction. What we've got here is really a paradox, that the future is being revealed, but it is also being hidden at the same time, right? Go to where it's overlined, v'hu remez. What I'm getting out of this, says Rabbi Yosef here, is that Daniel did not understand the nimshal, the application of these chezionot, of these visions. He got a picture in his mind. The angels talked to him, he was shown things, and when he woke up, the Spirit of God had left him, and he just didn't figure out what was going on. Maybe he understood what was happening when he was dreaming, when he was in the vision, when he was in the high meditative state, if you want to read it that way. So Rabbi Yosef ibn Yachya is saying here, it starts in yellow. I have no idea why we got 2 colors here. Hine afilu be'eit hamareh lo haya mevino. Let's tell the truth here. And none of the other commentaries are saying this. Even while Daniel was in his highly elevated spiritual state, he did not understand what he was being shown. And this was not because of Kotzer Hamasig, because he lacked intelligence. It was because of Omek Hamusag, the great depth of the subject that God wanted to show him. Laha'amiko ulahastiro. Paradox. To show him the absolute depth and also to conceal it. So he should not explain it and reveal it to other people. Daniel had prepared himself to do this. That's what Ibn Yahya is saying. I don't think I quoted that particular piece here, but his ascetic 3 weeks prepared him to attain this high spiritual state. He didn't eat meat, he ate only coarse bread, drank water, a bread and water diet, fasting, meditating, praying. He was able to achieve this high spiritual state and level of understanding. And he was able to ascend to high spiritual realms. Here's the interesting text here. Levilti heyot kilut lamala. I think I'm reading this correctly. I certainly hope so. There is no such thing as stinginess up there in heaven. Hayu mashpi'im bo kol hayediot. He was given absolutely every piece of information. He was told the end of days, every detail. And he wrote them down, even though he didn't understand them. V'lo yuvan mizulato, and no one else will come and understand them. Even I, Rabbi Yosef, even us here learning this today, we're not going to get what this is all about. Rakinyan arba hamalchuyot. We can only grab onto that which we are told about the 4 kingdoms. We're going to understand so much, but no further. And from the 5th kingdom, lo noda davar amiti v'kayam, there is nothing that is known, that is true, and that is going to hold out in the long run. So my experience with learning this so far is, I get what the 4 kingdoms are about. They're going to come, they're going to go. I have an idea of how the 4B, the 4C, the 4D, how all the Greeks and the Romans are going to play out, how the Ishmaelite kingdom sort of is going to play in there. And the absolute end, the 5th kingdom, the glorious kingdom, the end of days, wait and see. There's just some stuff that it's just not available for us to know. Okay, text number 3. Rashi, on going back to the Shloshim. Hannah's asking, why do we think it was given and written, even though no one would understand? I think that the thought that it had to be revealed to someone. I mean, God made people to have a relationship with us. And God wants us to know what God knows. God wants us to feel and to see what's going on up there in his purely spiritual world. And there are unique individuals in history who have been able to get some of this information and even transfer it to us. Think of the Ari, right? Rabbi Isaac Luria's Yortzeit was a couple of days ago. Tons and tons of writing and information that just doesn't click with us because our human minds don't have the ability to grasp this sort of stuff. Also, it gives us hope. It gives us hope, and it gives us an enormous amount of stuff to talk about and to focus on while we're waiting for this history to play out. Text number 3. Rashi on Daniel verse 2, the 3 weeks of days. Rashi says 21 years. I can account for 18 of those years, but not the other 3. It's got to be years. Yamim have to be years. Ibn Yahya here in this verse tells us that Daniel took on this ascetic diet because he wanted to do hashpalat hachomer. He wanted to push down his physical body and pull up his mental and spiritual abilities. Okay, another couple of verses here. Verse number 4. On the 24th day of the first month, right? There's a lot of discussion about what this first month is. If the first month is Nisan, right, the Hebrew month of Nisan, then this whole period of 3 weeks included Pesach. I don't know. It's hard to know. In the 24th day of the first month, I was next to the great river, which is Hidekel. Ezekiel is also there. I raised my eyes and saw, and behold, Ish echad lavush badim, one man clothed in linen, his loins girded with fine gold. His body was like Tarshish, his face like the appearance of lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, and his arms and legs like the color of burnished copper. The sounds of his word were like the sound of a multitude. I, Daniel, alone saw the vision. The people who were with me did not see the vision, but a great fear fell upon them, and they fled into a hiding place. Okay, text number 4. Again, we're back to Rabbi Yosef ibn Yahya. He says the going to the river Hidekel is a vision. He was not actually there, but it was a vision. I'm not entirely sure if that matters, but the next point he makes is mashal. This is a metaphor, it is a parable, that he sees great goodness coming down from heaven like a river. Right? Specifically to him because of his great preparation. Ibn Yahya is saying Daniel worked really hard to get spiritual enlightenment, and God sent him a river of good stuff from up there in heaven. Okay, here we go. Yosef ibn Yahya on Daniel chapter 10 verse 5. I raised up my eyes and I saw Ish echad min miyuchad v'hu mashal la'el yitbarach. This is a metaphor for God. The man clothed in linen is God himself. Daniel sees God as a man clothed in linen and also wearing a belt or a garment of gold. He explains it. Lavush badim. The white linen refers to God surrounding himself with light. The gold, etc., is pure gold, and that is a reference to God being pure gold in the metaphorical sense, of course, and that is free from all things of the physical world. There's a very long Ibn Ezra piece towards the end here. I think it's text number 11 that we're simply not going to read. Ibn Ezra is the big astrologer. He's the one who looks at heaven and earth in terms that we would call today astrology. That there are galim, there are circles, there are spheres that revolve. Not to be confused with gilgulim, right, meaning reincarnations, but galgalim, wheels and circuits that are there in the heaven. And right at the very, very tip top is God, and God lives there alone, in complete purity, 100% devoid of any physicality. And below God are different levels of spheres. There's the sphere where the angels live, and there is a hierarchy of angels. And then there is the sphere where the planets and the stars are. And we're going to see it, and some of this in this particular chapter, that the stars and the planets do indeed represent the various nations in the world and even human beings. And then below that is the sphere where we live, us ordinary human beings. It's worth looking at that Ibn Ezra, but it's an hour or two to read through it. Another day. So, Malbim on... Yeah, that was 5. Text number 5, Malbim. Malbim on verse 5, Levush Badim. They are linen garments referred to More'an Nikiuto min HaChomer. That God is completely clear, clean, devoid of anything physical. Seems to be Malbim is saying, like Ibn Yahya, that the ish he is seeing, the man that he sees, is in fact God. Tarshish. Zip ahead here, Rashi on Daniel chapter 10 verse 6. The Tarshish is to do with size. Tarshish is the name of a river, and it refers, I believe, to the Mediterranean. It is such a, what he saw, the being he saw was so huge, as big as the ocean. Ibn Yahya again, a precious stone, and it's sort of bluish. It's one of the stones on the Choshen, on the plate of the high priest, if you're going back to earlier on in the Bible. Again, descriptions of God in terms of color. Right? Text number 6. This interesting last line that we read here. Daniel was not alone. It plays against Ibn Yahya, who's saying this is a vision, but nonetheless, there were people there with Daniel. He was not alone. They did not see the vision, but they were terrified and they ran away. Rashi is saying basically what everyone else says, that the people who were with him were the prophets Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. There were 3 other prophets there, and they didn't get to see what Daniel saw. Right? Aval charada gedolah, great fear upon them, fell upon them. They were not blessed with this particular vision. And here we get this whole issue of each of us has a mazal. We have a representative angel. We have a star up there in heaven. Literally, a mazal is a planet, but there's something up there in heaven that we come from. This is very, very Kabbalistic stuff. And it's also very straightforward. It's the beliefs of how people looked at things in those times, but also we are reading these texts through a very medieval layer of commentaries, especially Ibn Ezra, especially Ibn Yahya, and they're looking at it in these terms. What he's saying here is, the rabbis have told us, this is Talmud, this is Midrash, that when you do not see something, and yet you have a fear, you get an irrational fear as far as you're concerned. What is happening is, Mazalo shebarakia ro'ehu, your angel, your representative part up there in heaven, sees the thing that is frightening up there in heaven, that parallels the thing that you don't see, that should be frightening down here on earth, and you get the fright. And that's what happened there. Or else, as Malbim says very, very simply, they were also prophets. They knew something was happening. And nonetheless, even though they felt the presence of a divine revelation, they didn't see it. In this particular area, Daniel was superior to them in receiving the message from above. Okay? Zipping right ahead, verse number 8. Daniel remained alone, and I saw this great vision. No strength remained in me. My robustness changed to pallor. I'm reading the Art Scroll translation there. Hodi, my appearance, my composure became, ne'apach, was turned over for me, lemashchit. Mashchit is something destructive, right? Lahashchit is to destroy. I was looking okay, and now I looked like what we say we look like when we look terrible. I had no strength left. I heard the sound of his words, kol divarav. Most likely the man dressed in linen, God or the angel. And when I heard the sound of his words, I was in a deep sleep upon my face. What does that mean? Nirdam al panai. Ufanai arza, I was near dam. I fell into a deep trance. It seems to be that the prophets all fall flat down on their face, prostrate themselves fully on the ground, and they are receiving their vision. Behold, a hand touched me and moved me up onto my knees and to the palm of my hands. So he's kneeling down and he's touched by a hand. One of the angels touches him and revives him. The touch brings him back. Verse 11, he said to me, right? We're still confused about who's talking, but it does seem to be the ish lavush badim, the man dressed in the linen clothing, and then there are angels. There is Michael, there's Gabriel, there is someone who looks like a man. Sometimes the ish is going to be taken to refer to Gabriel. There are beings there that he is seeing. He said to me, Daniel, greatly beloved man, ish chamudot, you're liked up there in heaven. I would like to say that chamudot means greatly refined, based on what we had at the very beginning of lechem chamudot. Not that it's the most desirable or the best bread, but the most refined, most purified. And in the mindset of former generations, pure white flour was what was best. All right, today it's completely the opposite way around. Greatly purified man. That makes more sense. Understand the words that I speak to you and stand in your place. Stand where you are. Amod, stand, al omdecha, on your standing place. Again, probably the place where you are standing in the spiritual heights. For I have been sent to you now. As he spoke these words, I stood trembling. He said to me, do not fear, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and to fast before God, your words have been heard, and I have come because of your words. Fasting, praying, meditating helps. But the heavenly prince of the Persian kingdom stood opposed to me for 21 days, until Michael, one of the foremost princes, came to me, for I had remained there alone beside the kings of Persia. There's something going on up there in heaven. The Persian angels, the angel of the Jews, the angel of Israel, the other angels. There's something going on up there. There's a battle. There is a change of power. That's what we're seeing in the background of the book of Daniel. There's a shift in power, right? Let's take a look at text number 7. Right? Text number 7 is, Rashi says exactly what I say. Ish chamudot is not the most desired of men, the most beloved, but ish tahor. You are a pure man. Your purification is worked. Right? Omeid lenegdi, verse 13 in Rashi, whereas the speaker says the prince of Persia is standing in front of me, he's fighting with me in heaven. What he is asking for, this prince of Persia, this angel up there in heaven, is asking length of kingdom for the Persians, in order to subjugate you, the nation of Israel. Keep Persia in power. Keep Israel from coming up. Hasarim harishonim, again we need to emphasize this, there are definitely senior and junior officers up there. Text number 8. Here we go. Ibn Yahya is giving us some background. Sar Malchut Paras, the angel, the prince of the kingdom of Persia. The 70 nations have in heaven 70 princes. each one representing them. And Israel has one who is called Michael. Now, the angel of Israel, the representative angel, Michael, is different. When he says Yitchalef, I think he means different as opposed to switched, right? Lahachlif is to switch something over. There is a difference between how the angel of Israel operates regarding and like by comparison to all of the others. Right? The angels of the other nations, Hema Elohehem. I'm just reading what he says. They are the gods relative to the other nations. And they work like a god to them. And there is no one who has any charge over them other than those particular angels. Right? I am skipping a line here. V'umnam Yisrael heim mushgachim me'Hashem. Nonetheless, Israel is under direct influence and authority of God, and the angel Michael only works with the authority and rule and orders of God. And the angel Gabriel, who is speaking here, says, he's contradicting himself, that he's saying the Ishlavush is God, and maybe here he's switching it over to Gabriel, or else it's someone else coming in. Nonetheless, Gabriel says to him that for the 21 days that Daniel was praying for his people to stop bad things happening, the prince of Persia was up there, and he was saying, I'm sorry, it's our turn still to oppose and oppress the Jews. And opposing him was Gabriel, me. Right? So this is a battle that goes on up there in the skies. Okay, let's read another verse. Verse number 14, I have come to make you understand that which will befall your people in the end of days, for there is a vision for these days. Right? These are words that are not actually going to be explained fully, but we're going to give it a try. We're going to see what we have here. The end of days. I am here, says the angel, lahavinacha, to make you understand that which will happen to your people in the end of days. Acharit hayamim. Ki od chazon, for there is another vision for the days, or for those days. Right? If you're familiar with terms from the 5 books of Moses, from the Chumash, think back to Jacob and his blessings, and think back to Bilam, right? Balaam, the heathen prophet. He uses similar sorts of terminology. And there's an echo here in this that you cannot ignore. Okay, text number 9. Rashi, ki od chazon, there is another vision. I'm going to tell you something that has not yet been told to you. That's what he's saying. Lagid lecha ma shelo hugad lecha. There's a time coming when I'll tell you what I haven't told you yet. Yeah, and Ibn Yahya is basically saying exactly the same thing here, that there's more to it than what I've told you. That there will be times, going ahead into Malbim here on verse 14, there are times that when nations are going to come, shelo uchal lenatzcham. I'm sorry, says the angel, I'm not going to be able to help you all the time. Ki od chazon leyamim. There is a vision of shibud acher. There is more subjugation and exile for the people of Israel. Okay, let's move on. We've got to get at least to the end of the chapter here. Verse number 15. Yeah, verse number 15. As he spoke these words to me, I set my face towards the ground and was dumbfounded. Then behold, one with the likeness of a human being touched my lips. Right? Sounds familiar? We've seen these terms before. He touched my lips. I opened my mouth and spoke. He was struck dumb by this whole series of visions. And I said to the one standing opposite me, my Lord, right? Small letter L. During the vision, my joints shuddered. That's a great sort of terminology. My bones were shaking, and I could retain no strength. How can this servant of my Lord speak with this Lord of mine? Right? Court terminology from a different time period. He's addressing the angel as my Lord, and I am, of course, speaking as a servant. From now on, no strength will remain in me, and there is no breath left in me. I can't do this. This is beyond me. Then he, the likeness of the human being, this is verse 18, he said, he touched me again and strengthened me. He gave him strength. And he said, fear not, greatly beloved man. You are so beloved up here in heaven. You are such a pure human being. Peace be to you. Grow strong and even stronger. Right? And as he spoke to me, I strengthened. And I said, speak, my Lord, for you have strengthened me. Verse number 20, and he said, do you know why I have come to you? Right? Rhetorical question. Now I will return to do battle with the prince of Persia. Then I will depart. I've taken time off from the war up there in heaven. Right? And I'm going to go back up there, and I'm going to be fighting that angel up there of the Persians. Then I will depart. I will leave. But lo and behold, the prince of Persia, not the prince of Persia, the prince of Greece is coming. Sar Yavan Ba. However, I will tell you that which is written in truthful writing. I've got something to tell you here. And I'm going to read to you from the ultimate book of truth. No one reinforces me against these except your heavenly prince, Michael. Gabriel is talking, and he says, I'm going to share with you some of the deepest secrets, the absolute truth. That's what we'll get to the next time in the next chapter. And I've just taken off a little bit of time to come talk to you. But I'm going to go back there. I'm going to try and hold off the Persians. And I am going to then get on with my work. And I, in the first year of Daryavesh the Mede, stood up as a support and stronghold for him. The Masoretic text has a paragraph break here, but verse 1 of the next chapter does seem to connect here. Va'ani is I, it's Gabriel's still speaking. I'm still up there working for you and working with Michael, the Prince of Israel. Israel has got more than one helper up there. We seem to have Michael, our own angel, and we seem to have Gabriel, who is the one speaking to Daniel, the explainer of things. Let's try and read a little bit more in the source sheets here. Number 10, Rashi on Daniel chapter 20. I know that I'm able to defeat this king, this prince of Persia, and the nation that goes along with him. Right? But until the kingdom of Antiochus comes, then I will go out of favor. and someone else will come in his place for 34 years. And then when Alexander Macedon comes, even though Israel was under the rule of the Persians in those days, the rule was not so terrible. What Rashi seems to be saying is that there is a power struggle up there. And just as we see today in nations, there are alliances that come and go. And Michael, the angel of Israel, Gabriel, who seems to be the helper up here, and God, of course, as well, are all on the side of Israel. Nonetheless, there are times when other nations are allowed to have dominion. Some of them will oppress Israel greatly. Some of them will oppress Israel a lot less. Right? Rabbi Yosef ibn Yachya on verse 20 there. Right in the middle. I've come to tell you. I've told you what has happened before. And I'm going to do my best to tell you all of this. Oops. Now what did I do? Technology is wonderful when it works, and when you push the wrong button, then you get into trouble and hopefully don't get too discombobulated. Yeah, Ashuv lihilachem im sar paras. There is a fight going on, and I don't know how it's going to play out. I'm going to see if I'm going to be able lahakel ol hagalut me'al amacha, if I'm able to do this. But the Greeks will have their time. There's a vision. There's a picture. There's a prediction. It's been set in place. All the nations, it's a sort of grayish color overline. Ibn Yachya again on 21. Ein shum echad misarei mala mitchazeki mi. There's no one helping me other than Michael. We are 2 against the 70 of the rest. All the other angels are fighting us. Right? Malbim. Next one. Yeah. Davar says shehitanita bavuro. This is what you've been fasting for, right? At the very beginning, Daniel was fasting, and he is saying to him, you fasted well. You prepared yourself well. And you're getting all this information. And the information is, I need to fight. I need to fight, and I need you to help me in this fight through your ascetic life and through being good. I have to go out. There are different things happening up there. Yeah, etz tarech. I have to, it is necessary. The last couple of bluish lines there. Etz tarech latzeit, miliot etzel hamelachim. I have to leave. I've got to go. And I've got to stop being an influencer up there in heaven, that they should be good to Israel. And the Prince of Greece is coming, and there's nothing I can do about it. That's the way God wants it to be. Aval, the last piece there, Malbim. Malbim on verse 21. Bezel lo uchal. I'm not able to tell you. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to defeat this prince. But I can tell you that it is a rule, it is a prediction that is written there in the book, in truth, and it cannot be undone. 11 is worth reading. It's Ibn Ezra doing one of the things that Ibn Ezra does, and that is talk about how heaven and earth work. Very last one on the page, note 12. Finish off with Rabbi Yosef ibn Yachya. Ein shum echad misarei mala. There's nobody fighting with me. V'chol tzava hashamayim v'malachim sareihem heim kinegdi. All the nations of the world, all their angels up there in heaven are fighting against the two of us. Right? Ki Hashem natan mishtaram ba'aretz. God gave them rulership. And this is how God has decreed the Ma'arachot Hashamayim, how the various stars and planets should align, and this can't be changed. Right? In the more general sense of the term, Israel has a mazal kasher. There is a particularly difficult star for Israel in the heavens. Right? Asher gozer alehem, I think, hashpala va'oni, that lowliness and poverty and affliction have been decreed for the nation of Israel for many different periods and for a very long time. And as we will see, God will eventually yishadei, break up all of these rules. It's all written in the stars. He's taking it literally, but we take this much more as a metaphor. It's all written in the stars, in the way the stars align for a particular nation and a particular period. And for the people of Israel, it's the difficult one. It's the hard row to plow, right? And God is going to change this. Right? I can't fully, easily, completely translate this last little bit of it. It's going to work out well in the end. That, yeah, I'm not following exactly what he's saying here right at the end. Sorry about that. There is a plan, right? This is a quite easy chapter actually. We've got the terms of Acharit Hayamim here. We've got the word Od Chazon. There's more stuff coming. We've got the 21 days, which may be 21 years. We've met the Ish Echad Lavush Badim, the one man dressed in linen, quite likely God. And we've met Gabriel and we've met Michael. And we're going to get a more focused version of the 4 and the 5 kingdoms in chapter 11, which would be a really good idea to read ahead. And this would probably be a good time to look at a summary of the book of Daniel, and especially a summary of the last chapters, because it is very, very confusing. We're talking about Persia, and he's going to say in verse 2, 3 more kings and a 4th. We're talking about the Greeks. We're going to read in the commentaries about the Ishmaelite kingdom coming along. But it is really, really confusing. See if we can find a simple summary of all of this. Wikipedia often works very well, surprisingly. When there's no axe to grind by whoever's putting these articles together, they're frequently just copying a summary that someone else has done in a book on the Bible itself. So we're going to try and get our heads into the king of the north, the king of the south. One of them has a daughter, marries the other. There is this absolutely amazing line that the 2 kings sit down together and exchange falsehoods between them. They have a peace treaty and each of them is lying to the other. And these are not nations that we have seen before. So the north and the south are not Persia, not Greece, not Rome, not Babylon, not the Ishmaelites. We're going to have a lot of things in mind here. And what I want to try and do is do a list of who the characters are, and then we'll see how much of this we can read the next time. Okay? Thank you all for your time and attention. We're only 4 minutes past the official ending time. Stay safe. Stay out of the heat and the sun. And for those of us of the Jewish persuasion, we are coming to the end of the 3 weeks, and it's the fast of the 9th of Av. Drink plenty of water in advance. Have a very meaningful, peaceful, and a very safe fast. and may God be with all of you.